excited to have you back. This is like the
Yay.
perfect excuse to talk to you about the tarot, because we're both tarot readers, and I just love talking to you anyway, any excuse.
I think it's going to be really fun.
Yeah. And yeah, what I was going to say, like, how long have you been reading the tarot for? When did you get into it?
I don't even know how long it's been, but I think, you know what's interesting? I feel like, especially with like spirit things, I will find something once and be like not about it. And then when I need it the most, it will then come back full cycle.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I first got like a deck, however many years ago that was, I just wasn't into it. I couldn't connect with the cards. I didn't understand the cards. I was like, no, this is just not for me. It's just not a practice I'm going to keep doing. And then when I was working at a magazine, me and the assistant on the beauty team, we both connected over this like huge rose quartz that landed on our desk for a photo shoot.
Yeah.
And we were like holding this crystal for like the whole day. And someone else on the team was like, I can't feel anything. We were like, no, I can really feel the vibrations of it. And we had this like witchy connection. So we started to do tarot like every day after work. And we'd just go to like Shake Shack on Tottenham Court Road.
So mystical.
we were like couched in like the back of Shake Shack, just trying to like do readings for each other and stuff. And that's kind of like how I got into it. Then it became like a very big like part of my life. Then I started learning with Lindsay Mack. And I think her approach to it was just like mind-blowing. I think she's such an incredible reader and teacher. And yeah, I think that's kind of like the beginning. And then it still took me a while after that to be like, oh, I want to actually use this as a tool with clients. Yeah. So it definitely took some time.
Yeah, I think everyone approaches it differently, don't they? I think some people will get a deck and they will just like learn themselves, that don't have any classes. Some people go and have courses. Like it's really weird like how I got into tarot, because I was like 14 and randomly there was like a little, I mean, to be honest, my mum's a bit of a hoarder, so there's always like random things in her house, but she's not mystical or witchy at all. But there was this little kind of fortune telling kit, and it had like some runes in there and some sticks to do that, some like, is it the I Ching kind of readings, and like a little tarot deck. And so I obviously watching The Craft at that time, like growing up being like, oh my god, I got a tarot deck, and I'd like pull the cards and it would be so basic. It'd be like, well, like, does so and so fancy me? When will I get a boyfriend? And then look it up in the book, but never really understand what it meant. But I'd always kind of like ask, and like now I know that I was kind of asking the wrong question. And then I started doing like different workshops and practicing and having oracle cards, and would go to oracle cards more because they were just easier to read and I understood them more. And then started signing up to like workshops and courses to learn more. But I found personally, and I've signed up to Lindsay's course but never done it. Like I signed up to, I don't know if it was like a couple of years ago. She like, I don't know, I went through this phase where I was like, do I need to know more? Do I need more training? I'm not trusting myself, I think, is why I signed up to it. And then I think I listened to a few of because hers is a nice format, isn't it? Because it's like lessons, videos and audios, which I quite like. So some of the audios ones I'd like listen to as I was walking, getting the train into London. But for me, learning the tarot has really come from getting to know the cards and the symbolism. I think and I used to start doing some readings for the girls at the salon when I was hairdressing, but still reading from the book. And then did a workshop with a lady and some courses with a lady called Tiffany Crosara. Have you heard of her before? Yeah, so with her, and one of them was like how to read the tarot. I think it was like how to read the tarot without the book, without the guidebook. So I'd started to kind of like learn more and get a bit more confident. And then one of my friends, I mean, typical me, like I say like yes to doing things without thinking about it. And one of my friends was doing a like festival, and she's like, do you want to do tarot readings? Or I might have even said, I'll do tarot readings, and then was like, shit, how do I get out of this? I remember kind of like she'd text me, like I was like, yeah, I'll do it, and then being like, oh my god, and then kind of ghosting her. And then I'd like message her, I was like, Chloe, I don't know if I should do it. She's like, you'll be fine, you'll be really good at it. So it was like this festival called Street Fest in Shoreditch.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Like, not really the tarot as you would think, the tarot vibe. But so I spent like a whole week like drawing and like having doing my own little poster for my table and like getting it ready. And then like, I started doing readings, but that's the first time that it really gave me confidence, because I couldn't do a reading for someone and be like, oh, let me just look it up. I was really just reading the book. And it was the first time that I was reading for people that I didn't know, that was outside a workshop environment. And in the end, like there was literally a queue of people wanting readings, because people were having them, then they were going to go telling their friends. And it just kind of gave me the confidence to, I mean, I had that training to back me up, but it gave me the confidence to kind of go from there, and it's like gone from there for me. But how did you get into like reading professionally?
Yes, I think like when by that point, after I did like Lindsay's course, and I had kind of had my own meanings for all the cards, I just know if it would be a part of my work ever. So it just became this like very private practice. I didn't read for anyone. And for me, that was like the only way that I stepped into actually being a reader, because the only way I could like leave the guidebook, I had a real resistance to like being reliant on it, because I didn't actually resonate with the meanings in the guidebook, which is not helpful. I was kind of like, that doesn't make sense to me, so where do I go from here? So I just kept like pulling cards every day for myself. And the more things I was going through in my life, and when the cards came up, which were just like showing me like a 360 of the situation, it just really helped me to learn the cards in a way that wasn't like, oh, okay, so the Ace of Cups means this, and so on. It was like, oh, this card comes up to me when I'm feeling this certain kind of way, or I need to like learn something. Then I started just doing it for like friends, and they were like, you're reading like a very different way. This is not what I was expecting. And then again, it's like that confidence piece that you had too, of just being thrown into the fire. And I was always like, I remember I did like this cheat sheet on like Excel of like the picture of the card and like some little keywords for each card. And I was like,
so organized.
And I was like, I can't even like take to the read with me. So why do I even have this? And I just had that trust piece. The more readings that I did, the more just like fully intuitive. And when the more friends that I had, the cards just like evolved in terms of their meanings for me. Because, for example, that same Ace of Cups meant this in my life when I had all these like friends who were bringing up that card too. It meant the same thing, and that's how it shaped my own meanings of the card. And I kind of started my practice with just like doing like Reiki sessions and other like spiritual teachings. And I would sometimes just pull like a little fun card at the end of a session. And then my clients were like, this is like next level. Can you keep doing that? I was like, I don't love this for me. And I think I just had, I think also when I had lots of my clients in the beginning of my practice, they'd all had like really bad tarot readings before.
Yeah. Had you had tarot readings before?
Yeah, I had a few and they were just, weren't my vibe. So I had like a lot of people coming to me being like, I have this awful tarot reading once, and she told me that, I'm never going to get married, or all these like really like doomsday predictions. And I was just like, I just don't want that responsibility, because I never read the cards in that way. But I just knew how much resistance people had to it. And then I just had, I kept pulling the same cards, and I just kept getting this message through of, yeah, but my work here is to change that. Because if I've seen how much of a healing tool that tarot can be, then I can't keep that to myself. Totally. So as much as like my ego is resisting the process, that's exactly what I need to be doing. So I started stepping into that, and I mean, it's pretty much 95% of all my sessions now. So it's pretty much come like full circle. And I guess like the way that I read the cards now is literally because I've had so many clients, and they're the ones who shape the meanings of the cards, because every single year, every card evolves and shifts meaning for me. And I'm sure they probably do the same for you too, right?
Yeah. And I think for me, I'm really visual. So when I'm reading the cards, different things jump out at me at different times. That's why I like to work with cards that have got lots of different imagery in. Like some of the minimalist ones, I don't resonate as much, or like but part of me, as I'm saying that, I was like, maybe I'm just leaning on the visuals to feel into it. But my reading style has definitely changed over over time. It's evolved and different things come through, and I've noticed more so since I got my own place like in December last year. I don't know if it was because in my space, no one else was coming and going, whereas before I was doing a lot of the time doing readings in places that were either you've got people around or you've got people like you can hear outside noise.
Yeah.
But because of my, oh wait there 1 minute. Mm-hmm. Just telling my boyfriend off. He's just come home. He's like, I've just walked through the door. I was like, I know, but that's why I'm telling you. But yeah, so I think because having my own space where it's mine, no one else is coming and going, it's a converted shipping container, so it's relatively soundproof. Like I started noticing that when people were coming to see me for a reading, I was reading, and also with my Zoom, like clients that I was seeing on Zoom, like I was reading them and messages were coming through before I was even looking at the cards. And it wasn't even on purpose. You know, when you start talking to someone and then all of this information just starts like downloading. And then for me, I'm very visual, so kind of like I get visualizations or kind of messages. I see it in that way where I'll get an impression of something that represents what's going through what they're going through. So then I like read through that. But yeah, when I look at the cards, different things pop out at different times. I remember doing a reading for someone a while ago when I was working a lot more with the Star Child deck, and it was like I had like the first edition, and like in that edition, because the cards are all different now with each collection that she brings out or edition, but I'd pulled the Emperor card for someone, and on this card the Emperor was depicted as this lion in the desert, and as I was looking at the card I could just feel the lion's claws in me. It was so sensory, and I was like, I've never had that with the Emperor before. And then we were talking about it, and it basically she was in a very controlling situation with an ex that she was trying to get away from, and that's what the claws were, because that's also the shadow side of the Emperor, isn't it? Like that's the thing. But yeah, so it changes. But I mean, do you work with lots of different decks, or are you monogamous? Are you promiscuous with your tarot?
You know what's so interesting? It's like when that was the first deck that I got was Rider Waite, and I had like bought like a bunch of other decks, and they were all like fine. I could read them all; they were all lovely. And I don't know if it is just like the history of that deck, but it was just always, to this day, always be like my deck that I always go back to. I use like Neo Tarot by Joe Comandova a lot.
Yeah, nice.
I think the imagery is beautiful, and I think it's really inclusive. But there's just something about Rider Waite that just always has my heart. I feel like it just feels like a safe space, and it just feels like it's a deck that I learnt with, it's a deck that I just practiced with for so many years. It just feels like the symbolism in the original deck just feels like so spot on for me in my readings. And I think what's interesting, like hearing about how yours is so visual led. Mine's like the opposite, and mine, it's interesting about how we speak about those different channels, and like you have so much information when you have the Zoom call, like when you have those face-to-face readings. And it's funny because people always say to me, because all my sessions are on phone or WhatsApp, people always say to me like, oh, is it because of the pandemic? I was like, no, I've always read that way.
Yeah.
And I used to do one-to-ones in person, and I realized that my readings are so much better over the phone on WhatsApp, because I get lots of my information from spirit from just like hearing things or downloads. And when I have like more things in my channel, like people or like just things around me, it just really blocks my readings. So I get like a deeper experience when I'm just connecting to you over the phone. I'm just like closing my eyes, just like channeling things through. I normally end up speaking really quickly, but when I'm in person, I'm just like, I can hear things, I can see things. But it's just so interesting how we read in different ways. But I think Rider Waite for me is always my go-to deck, or at least like decks that have been kind of like really shaped and modeled on the original. And normally what feels really comfortable for me.
I never got into the Rider Waite deck. I could never really connected with it. And when I had that deck that I'd found at home, and then I got the Shaman Caselli deck. So it's a lot soft visually, it's a lot softer. So that was kind of like my first one. And now, even though I use the Serpent Fire deck now, I still, when I'm looking at those cards, I think sometimes it will come to me like, how is that drawn? How was the visual of it in a more traditional deck comes to me, because that also helps me explain to the person like what's going on, because I think that's the thing with the traditional decks. They are steeped in so much symbolism, aren't they? So there's so much that kind of, and how it is visually. Whereas I think with a lot more of the modern decks, they are to the design, the creators kind of like expressions, and some 100%. Of them are more abstract, aren't they? Or what their interpretation of that. And that might not always be clear to the reader. So I think like that's how it kind of comes through to me. But I remember I was like working with I still haven't found that actually. I'd bought the She-Wolf deck by Serpent Fire, but then I felt intimidated by it and just had it on the side. And then I lost the King of Pentacles or the King of Crystals from my Star Child deck. I was like, no, like we've been through so much, I can't read without it. But you know, when you're so attached to, because you've gone through so much with those cards and with other people, I was like, no, like we've made so much magic together, what can I do? And I mean, I don't know, I think that some people do read with decks with cards missing. I wouldn't. I have met people before that are like, yeah, I've had it for so long, I've got cards missing, blah blah blah, blah. And that's up to them. I just wouldn't. And then I was journaling about it, freaking out, being like, oh my god, I've got to do readings later and I've lost this card. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's time to up level. My energy's shifted, and that's why it's time to work with a different deck. And then so I was like, just surrender, just take your She-Wolf deck, go and do your readings. And it was just like such a good day of readings. Like the energy was so different.
Yeah, and I think like I almost go through like seasons of a deck. So remember we were on the phone.
Yeah, you said that the other day, didn't you?
Yeah, about the Fountain Tarot. So I had Fountain was like one of the first decks that I bought, and it just looked really pretty, and then it just stayed on my desk for years. And I would always like try and do a reading, I just would not be in it, and I just never did any client sessions with them. I remember saying to you on the phone, like, we just got something going on with me in that deck. And it was so fun. Like then the day afterwards, I did like a yoga class, and I was in Shavasana, and I had this message from Spirit being like now's the time. So I pulled the deck out to do a reading for myself, and it's just such an incredible reading. And I really think that I kind of go through these moments where a deck just wants to speak through me, and I'll just kind of use that exclusively for like until it feels good. And when it doesn't feel good anymore, then I'll just like switch my decks up. It's even the same like Rider-Waite. So last month most of my sessions were all Rider-Waite, and then this month have all been like Neo Tarot. And I feel like maybe we might move into like Fountain next month. So I do think it's like sometimes just kind of get those wisdoms of like, okay, this is a deck that wants to come through right now. So it's nice having like a few that are in the collection.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have a few different ones. People, I always get messages from people saying like, what deck should I have? And I think it's just so personal that you can't, it's not for me, because our taste is different things will resonate. And I think it's so important to have a deck that resonates with you and you feel drawn to it, because I don't know, I think it's good to learn with the traditional decks because it's got all that symbolism, so you're really kind of understanding how it works. But I don't think you have to, because that might be your own process. Like you really might not resonate with it, and that might be the thing. I know I went from Shaman Giselle, which is more traditional, to then working with the Wild Unknown, which is very abstract, like very, quite dark. But I really liked and I think that was the first like tarot deck that was like non-traditional that I was seeing around on Instagram. Like I hadn't seen many others, whereas now there's so many out there.
There's so many. I mean, I think it's so necessary. I think that as our meanings of the cards like evolve and adapt as, you know, a society and as a collective, then those images then evolve and adapt as well. And I think they're really reflective like the time they're created in. So even though like I find it really comforting to kind of have all of that history, you know, just all, I guess like with the Rider-Waite, it just really makes me feel like part of this family of readers who've like all like either learned from this deck or used this deck. There's like this real sense of unity and community with it. But then at the same time, it's like, you know, the decks that are created now are really reflective of the moment we're in. And, you know, there's more archetypes and characters who look like you and who look more reflective of how society looks now. Yeah. And images that are very, you know, with like mobile phones in and stuff like that. Like it's just like more reflective of our time.
Have you seen, are there decks for people on their phones?
I'm pretty sure there are, unless like I made that up. But I feel like
probably you can get pizza tarot decks. I'm sure there's one.
Totally, I feel like there's some really cool decks that feel like really, you know, in like 50 years time, you'll look back at that deck and be like, oh my god, it's such like a 2020 card or like a 2020 deck. So I think it makes sense for sure to kind of see what the creative process is for the person who creates that deck, and I guess like what their like stimuli has been to create it. Yeah,
and like you said, things are changing so much, and like when we look at a traditional tarot deck is it's like 56, 72. I've gone blank. How many cards? Not 70, 78? It's not 56, 78 cards. 22 major arcana, and then the rest are broken down into the minor arcana, which are like the one or like the elements of like fire, earth, air and water. So whether that's wands, pentacles, swords or cups. Sometimes they're crystals, aren't they, for pentacles, or
coins sometimes.
And then what else? I'm trying to think what other ones, but different interpretations. But knowing that, but with the major arcana, it starts off with like see it as the world, and I haven't, not the world, the journey, and like I haven't made that up. It's like kind of how it is, and it starts off with a fool, and it goes through all the different cards into the world, and it shows us kind of the cycles and the stages that we go through, which I think are fundamental to the human experience. But also the world is very different now. Our human experience to an extent is very different to when the cards were first, kind of like the first forms of them, and I think that was in the maybe like 1400s, 1500s.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting too. I think the majors have really been like, I guess the deepest learnings of the cards for me is like, I think especially this year, I remember I was just like working through like a little personal healing journey, and I was literally could like feel I was just in the fall. And it's so funny, it's like every week that went past, I was just seeing my energy shift into like the next card in like a very cyclical, rhythmic way. And I remember one day being like, I'm in Hanged Man. I've been here for a while now. And it's just so interesting, you know, and I think we've spoken about this before, how we're just like living through these cards.
Totally.
And of course, like our teachings become deep, because like I was in that Hanged Man energy for like a month. So when I'm reading it now, I can really resonate with my client in like, that's just kind of how it feels. It's just like hanging in there, waiting for something to happen before that really big transformative death moment happens. And I think that makes us they're just like such beautiful, rich life lessons, because it's really about how we move through these like moments of pain and suffering and like real sense of like joy and accomplishments until we kind of get to those lessons.
And that's what I think makes you a better reader in itself, because you've lived the cards. It's not memorizing and be like, I know that the eight, like this is like the aces mean like new beginnings, or that like the four means new beginnings, or these things. It's actually living it, so that it's more tangible, so that when you're guiding someone through that card, when that comes up for them, it's just so much more, I think, supportive, because you've lived it. You know how it moves through you in your life, how that will show up, but also the energetics of what's next. With like leaning into it, and that I don't know, because there's always like, recently I've had the devil coming up for a lot of people, and I'm always like, pull it like quick disclaimer, don't worry, we're going to talk about this, like
I swear, like every single client I have who's like quite nervous about our session, I always call devil or death, and I'm always like just a little caveat. It looks pretty rough.
Don't worry.
But actually, I mean, honestly, like, the devil's one of my favorite cards.
Totally. I think
it's messy, but it's like, it's just, once you go through the devil once, it's just such like this huge life lesson. It's like this really big change. It's just such indicative of the spiritual journey, isn't it?
Completely, because I think the devil is just showing us where we are self-sabotaging and keeping ourselves stuck and making excuses and not stepping into our power.
I think like it's just, it's just become like my little pet name for my ego. Like, I just know when I'm in the devil card, and I'll just say to myself, like, I know this is the devil. Like, I know this is the story that I'm putting myself into right now. And I think when we can start to, I think for lots of my clients too, like the big teaching I have with the devil card is always, this is like the moment where you start to really work with that and have the awareness piece of, this is actually not even me who's having these behaviors of like self-sabotage or these like critical thoughts. It's just like my ego. And the devil's like designed to pull you into that.
Yeah, totally.
It's going to make you feel really shitty about something that you've done. And I think when we can start to realize, like, actually, I'm just not going to buy into that stuff. I'm going to be able to like see things a different way. Then we can start to, you know, like free ourselves from the chains that run that card.
And the cards are so multifaceted as well. Because I know sometimes people are like, oh, I'm going to look up the cards afterwards. And it's like, but that's not, like, go for it. But it won't be what I said, because it's being like how the cards are like a reflection of us and ourselves, and when they're all together, they're playing together. So the devil will mean something very different if it's next to the Fool or if it's next to the Empress. So that's what kind of changes the tone and like what's coming up around it. So it's like, yeah, go and look up, but that's not gonna be what it's about. Oh, I've got a funny story. I remember when I first started seeing my boyfriend, and he was like, we haven't been seeing each other that long. He's like, come do something for me, like do something. And I was like,
something witchy.
Yeah. I was like, I'll do a tarot card. I'll do a tarot reading for you. So I did a tarot reading for him, but I maybe more out of the book when I did it for him at that time. And like the cards were really good. Like it was about him like meeting someone, like getting the situation being really good. And I was like, this was weird because, and also it was telling me stuff that he hadn't told me about himself, and like quite deep stuff. So I was like, oh, da 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 da. He was like,
awkward.
What? Yeah, and I was like, but at that time I was like, look them up.
Yourself.
Don't take, because I don't want you to think that I'm saying like, now that you've met me, your life's going to be amazing. Because like,
I'm saying something that indicates a real goddess coming into your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
So that was like really interesting. So at that time I did say like, go and look it up, because I don't want you to think that I'm just saying this. But he was like, how do you know that about me? With other things, because of what was coming up in the card. But it's just, they all mean different things, don't they?
Yeah, I think it's like,
and I think even from what you're saying, like, not that either of us are right or wrong, but your experience with each card is different to mine.
Exactly. And I always think that we'll both like have the same cards, and like I'm sure we'll read them in very different ways.
Yeah.
And not only because that's like how, like, shaped by our own life experiences, or the teachers that we've worked with, the decks that we've worked with, the clients that we've had that have different experiences with those cards.
Yeah.
But also in that moment, right, you're going to be getting like those visual cues and those symbolism cues, as you said. I'm getting like spirit channeling stuff down through like downloads. So it's never going to be exactly the same. And then of course, when you go onto like a website or in the guidebook, it's just like the one sanitized meaning.
Yeah.
And I remember something that that Lindsay Mack always says with the cards, like, if it doesn't apply to everyone, it does not apply to anyone. And that was so big for me when I was doing like my first sessions, when I was trying to understand the meanings of the cards. Because like, if a reader's like, you're going to get married based on this card, because that's what the card means. If you Google the card and it's like, oh, this card's like the engagement card or the baby card, it's like not every person wants to have kids or wants to get married.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't apply to everyone, then therefore like that's just not a real meaning. In the same way that I pulled a card, the death card again, for a new client, and she was like, so no one's going to die, right? And I was like, no, absolutely not. No. And I was like, imagine if everyone who pulled the death card, if like someone legit died, we would just not be in business anymore.
Yeah. So that's such a good point.
Like, we just wouldn't. Yeah. But no one will come back. So it's like, if it's, unless it can apply to every single person, it just doesn't apply. So I think like that can be really empowering for people when we read to them, because it's a very unique individual, you know, reading based on what that person's going through, and like the reader that you have. And every session is always different. Like, even if you have the same client every week for the next 10 years, every reading will look very different. Yeah. Based on like their energy and like your energy, what you get and what comes through.
Yeah. But then also sometimes if they're not doing the work, so I think the cards, when you're doing a reading for them, how I read it is it's kind of like showing us where the work needs to be done.
100%.
So if they don't do anything about it, they will come back in a week or in a month or maybe even 6 months, and the cards will be very similar because nothing's changing. I think that's how like stalker cards work as well. Like we go through phases where no matter how many times you shuffle the deck, you will get a card that comes up. Like, maybe not every time. Sometimes like I have had like a streak where I've had like the same card come through like 4 or 5 times, or it'll be that one, then another one, then it'll come back to that one, and it'll be that again a couple of times. And I think that is always just reinforcing a message.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know about you, I love to hear what some of those stalker cards are for you, but for lots of my clients, it's always the star card. Yeah, and like I had a client I think 2 years ago, who we did like a lot of work together. Without doubt, every single session, the star card came up. And it was because, she was really resistant to that healing process and having to look at stuff that she needed to like move through and to heal through. And the moment when we kind of had those really big breakthrough moments, we just never pulled the star again.
Yeah.
And it's just so indicative. Like, I think it's hard too, when we think about tarot as this like fortune telling tool, right? It's like, that's just never promised to you. Also, tarot for me, and I think for you too, is like, this is the work to get to the things that you want, right?
Yeah. So you create the future that you want.
So I'm like, by all means, if we pull the King of Pentacles, we can say that like, yeah, this is a really exciting, big, abundant card for you. But also, if you pulled like the star card before that, you're going to have to heal through some shit to get to the King of Pentacles. So if you have that willingness to look at the stuff and see tarot as this like great tool for the life that you want, is available for you to have it. But this is like what's in the way of that, or what you need to like be thinking about to kind of get to the next step.
I think that's the thing. We get stuck in these patterns. Yeah. And that's what the tarot helps us do, because it helps us to see the decision that we keep making, which is leading us to a situation that maybe we have outgrown or we don't want anymore. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that comes through a lot, is that we do the same thing. Sometimes we think we're doing things differently, but fundamentally there's something, whether it's a belief behind it or something where we're not fully investing, and then we're expecting different results, and then we don't. But what the tarot does is it shows us the pattern, what is that thing that's holding us back, so that we can do things differently and shift course. Because how I see it is that energetically we're on trajectories, but we have free will of where we want to go. And I think we talked about this in the very first episode of Another Phase with you, that like, this is your trajectory, but you might not want that might also be based on limiting beliefs, and you could have better than that, or there's another way that we could do it, but this is what you're on at the moment, and you've got free will to change that and do it how you want. Sometimes I think with predictions, people, when they're not as aware of how all this spirituality stuff actually works, they will have a reading and it will be like, you will meet someone in however long. And so some people are like, cool, I'm just going to wait for that person to come into my life because that reader has said that that's going to happen. But maybe because you think that's going to happen, you don't bother to put yourself out there, or something what that opportunity that is actually going to lead you to it, you don't take it because you're just sitting at home waiting.
And I mean, I think ultimately, if your intention for a tarot reading is to have an answer or prediction, there's this element of like wanting to have comfort.
Of course.
If you want to know what the future holds, it's because you want comfort in knowing that thing's going to happen for you, which is usually something that is actually an external thing, right? So it's going to be, I want the comfort of knowing that my job is going to be okay. I want comfort in knowing that I'm going to meet this person and have children, and I'm going to be really happy. And it's like, you are the only one who has the power to create that. So I can never tell you in a reading what will happen, because only your inner reality can shape your outer reality. And only you have the tools to be able to make the future they want to call in come in. And I think when we can empower people as readers to understand that these cards are here for you to shape that future, it's not set in stone. you have a choice. You can walk away from that reading being like, I didn't hear what I wanted to hear, I'm going to ignore it.
Yeah.
Actually, readings will always give you what you need, not what you want.
Completely.
And if you get like a bunch of like devils and devs, then it's like, that's your wisdom. And that's like the biggest teaching and the lesson you need to have in that moment. If you apply them, I mean, we've both seen how many clients who have applied what those means, what those cards mean, have committed to the inner work. They're living their best damn lives.
Yeah, completely.
And like, because, you know, sometimes like we don't want to really hear. And I had a client the other day who, lots of the cards we pull like very much like the work cards, right? So like there's some stuff to investigate, like all these like things to do. And sometimes you can just be like, I mean, how much more of this do I have to go through? Like how much work do I need to do? But we just know it's like, it's at this point, cause and effect. You do the work, you get the results.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Of course. Yeah. That's where the prediction is. If you do this.
Yeah. It's like, it's like a, like, there's like little scammy lawyers who are like, unless you win, you have to pay me. And it's like the only guarantee we can make as readers is, because we both have so much faith and trust in spirit and faith and trust in tarot, my only prediction can be for you, if you do this work, you will live your best life, full stop.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that life's going to be free from pain and suffering, because guess what, life isn't.
Completely.
But I can guarantee whatever your purpose is you're working towards, you'll always achieve that if you commit to the work that these cards reveal to you. And even the cards that feel really, you know, resistant, and I've had my fair share, like every single day when I pull a card for myself, I'm just like, you know what, I'm not in the mood for this today. But I always do it because I've just made that pact with myself. Like I choose to always show up. And any card that I pull, I know that it's only coming up for a reason. And I think too, and I'd love to hear what you think about this, but sometimes when, you know, we pull a card, the card obviously gives us the message, right? But actually the 77 cards it could have been is also a message. So I had a client yesterday who we pulled a card about like her blocks around calling in like partnership. And she got the 4 of Wands, and I always read that card as being like, just like, have some fun, like chill, it's coming. And I think hearing that can be annoying, right? Because if it's such a big thing you're trying to call in and the answer is have some more fun, it's like, I need some more answers here. But I'm like, we could have pulled 77 other cards which are about inner work, like past trauma, like wounds. We didn't get any of that. So therefore, like, joy for you right now is the biggest lesson. And I think there's so much wisdom that we can have from just like the cards that could have been in that position. To really prove the point of like, this is where you need to be focusing on right now.
And even like with the 4 of Wands, it's like just it's releasing that attachment to it. For us, having fun, being in that energy, feeling like abundant and like bountiful regardless of that other person. It's not that they're filling that gap, is that you've got everything that you need.
And like manifesting has become very serious. And
it's a chore, isn't it? And I think it reinforces to people. I had a client the other day and we were talking about it, and I think sometimes the intention of doing the work on ourselves shifts the results. So in a way, like you going in and having it, so I need fixing again, using the relationship like with that client. If I don't fix myself, if I don't clear all of my blocks, I'm not going to meet someone. Totally. If I don't do this, so I've got to do all of these sessions with all of the different healers and do as many different things and read all the books, because if I don't do all of those, then I'm not going to manifest that relationship. Or coming from the place of like, I'm so ready for a relationship. How do I I'm so ready for it. How do I make it easier? You know, like how do I prepare myself, because I know that relationship's coming. So how do I get myself ready for it when that relationship comes? So different, isn't it? But I think when you're in the latter, that's what opens up. But when we're like, I need to do another session, or I need to read another book, or like, there's something wrong with me, that can reinforce that energy.
And I really feel that my question always is, when we're really clinging onto that external thing, is you've lost track of why you're doing this.
Completely.
Because if you want a partner, you're just doing all this inner work to meet them, or if you're doing all the inner work to have the dream job, it's like, are you even still thinking about the joy that you'll have when you have the partner? How do you want to feel when that partner comes through? Because I think when we're consumed by the lack and scarcity of not having the things we want, we forget why we're actually calling those things in. So you can write down until you're blue in the face, like, I want to manifest like £250,000. Do you know what you're spending that money on? No, it's just
or why you want that money, or what that money is going to help you do.
And I think, you know, we've really started to liken, you know, manifesting all these like practices with inner work and like excavation and like healing stuff and fixing things.
Mm-hmm.
And we're linking them to external things.
Mm-hmm.
So when we don't get the external thing, it's like there's something inherently wrong with me.
Yeah.
Which is bullshit.
And but then that comes back to the good girl complex, isn't it? If I do everything right, if I be the good girl, if I work really hard, I'll get what I want.
Exactly. And the intention kind of needs to be, I mean, for me in my life, it's always been, if I do the inner work, my life will change, full stop. I'm not going to be attached to the external things that I can have by doing the inner work. I think it just becomes really damaging when, for example, if you want to manifest a car and you're convinced that you have to do all of this, like removing like beliefs and doubts and fears to get to this car, because if you then don't get the car, you then believe there's something wrong with you, when actually you just may not need another new car. There could be just like a very
easier way of doing it. Like we overshoot it, so it's like, I need a car, I need X amount of money, whereas actually you don't need to. It could just be that you do a bit of research and you can get some payment plan where it costs you, I don't know, 150 quid or something. So you only need to manifest 150 quid and make sure that you keep rather than thinking you've got to have, I don't know how much, it depends on what kind of car you want to buy, I guess.
I mean, I do think I think tarot is such a great way to work out what those blocks are for manifesting. Because they really can show you, like, if you've been shooting for the same thing and you're in that pattern and, you know, you're not seeing whatever that thing you want is to come through. The cards will literally black and white be like, oh, it's rooted in this. Maybe there's some more healing there. Maybe it's actually just like your ego running this huge story about it. Or actually, it's probably just not even in alignment for you to have the thing that you're trying to call in. Like, there could be an easier way. And I think it's such a great way of bringing tarot into that manifesting practice to really see, like, what's underneath the surface here. Like, do I actually really want this thing that I'm trying to call in? Is it like a soul desire? Like, is it an ego desire?
And sometimes I think people are calling, they're like, I'm ready for this thing. For example, relationships, because I think that's quite a universal thing. But there's something where like, I want a relationship, but actually deep down, that person might be really still need healing from that past relationship and have a lot of fear around there. So that relationship isn't going to come, isn't likely to come in because there's this protective energy that they've also got around them because they're scared of that thing happening. So doing the healing work is what needs to come through. And I think it sometimes, like what you were saying earlier, like people aren't ready to hear they're not ready to hear it. So you're telling them and they're like, she's wrong or that's not it. And then it's only like further down the line and they're like, oh yeah, that's what this is about. I remember doing a reading for someone and I was like, oh, like, I see you changing careers. And she was like, nah.
No, thank you.
No. And I was like, have you got any hobbies? Like, I can see you like training on something else. And she was like, nah, like literally blank. And I was like, I've lost it. Like, you know, when you're like, and I don't like to force it. I'm not like trying to pull it out. And I was like, well, this is what the cards are saying. Like, nah. I was like, okay. Anyway, I moved on with like what was going on. And then a few months later, I was at an event and this woman was like, oh yeah, we're opening up this nail salon in Dalston. It was like still London, and we have got a treatment room there. Like, would you want to come do readings? I was like, oh my god, actually perfect, because I'm looking for somewhere at the time. This was before I got my little place. And she's like, oh, actually, yeah, you did a tarot reading for my daughter. You said because at the time she was working as a PA, but like for some big shot in London, and now she's trained to be a nail technician and she's got running her own salon. So that's what I was talking about. So sometimes you're just not ready to hear it, and also you don't have to accept it.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think tarot is so good at being the bridge between your past, present, and future self. So sometimes when we pull a card, it's like, that is in the adverse way of that fortune telling us element. Sometimes we pull a card because like we're something that we're stepping into, or an energy we're stepping into. Even if your consciousness can't really grasp, but like you're gonna, you know, for example, change careers soon. It's like whenever we ask for something, or we're already like, we may not be experiencing it yet, but we're already in receipt of it. So if that intention was always to like have this really beautiful dream job career situation, even if you don't have it right now in your hands, it's already on its way to you. So in that moment, in that session, she wasn't experiencing it yet, but there was a part of her in this lifetime already having it.
Yeah.
It's just a case of like her stepping into that.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the messages are there just to plant seeds.
Yeah.
So that it's like, come on, like we were saying earlier, it's like little kind of like, oh no, it was before we started recording, actually, we were talking about things. So just before I started recording this conversation with Giselle, I had found out that someone had set up like a fake Instagram account like under my name and has been messaging people asking them if they want readings. Giselle and I were talking about how these things happen as like just little signs to tighten things up. And I think that with the card, sometimes it's just a little heads up. Either this, get ready for this is coming, you know, you might not be in that energy yet, and not into scary, because I think when we're prepared, the ride can be so much smoother. It doesn't mean that the ride's going to be smooth, but when we're prepared, we can call in the resources that we've got and what we need to make space for that coming through.
Yeah, and I almost feel like I get this a lot with clients who are, you know, calling in that relationship. They'll put a lot of cards of like how to relate once they have it. And they can get really confused by it, because they're like, well, I don't really understand why this is talking about like communication. I don't really feel that right now. It's like, because you may not see that you're going to be in this really loving relationship, but spirit can.
Yeah.
And spirit's kind of saying to you, like, when you're in that relationship, be aware that you're going to have to be vulnerable and have those really hard conversations. That's why that card's coming up for you. So I do think it can be this, like, if spirit kind of is working behind the scenes to like bring new things and to like make your life full of like ease and grace, it will just give you like these little nudges and little tools to kind of help you. Because I think we forget that like the universe is always working in our favor, not conspiring against us. And if spirit's only intention is for us to always live a life that's in our highest and greatest good, it will always give us little clues and heads up on things, because that's the point. We're never being punished by spirit.
No.
Contrary to popular belief.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, despite how it might feel at times, there's something working. There's something it's how you work with it, isn't it? But yeah, I think, what was I going to say? My brain's just like gone completely blank. The cards get me. Yeah, sometimes you need to get, like I said, it's like I was saying earlier, it's like setting those seeds. So you might not be ready to hear it yet, but you need to know that, so that you kind of, it's in your consciousness, so that you're kind of prepared for it when it does happen. And like maybe warming up to that idea, or having that in the back of your head, so that you know what to do when it does happen. Because if you'd have been told that closer to the time, or maybe you're not going to see either of us for a reading anytime again for another like year or 6 months, you're getting that message now to make sure that you get it, because maybe that person hasn't got a spiritual practice where they can connect with these answers consciously and what's coming through. So we're giving them the download, because like these are the things that they need to know now. So that when this comes up, that they know it.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I remember when I was having that real season of like pulling the devil card all the time. And as much as I was going through it and living through it, it was also there to teach me, when I'm in that same brain space in 10 years time, I will always look back on those lessons of that devil card and be like, oh, I know how to navigate that.
Yeah, totally.
So it's almost like, yes, it's not like a one-hit wonder. If you pull like the King of Swords once in this reading, once you've lived through that energy and you've understood the guidance and wisdom, in 5 years time, you're in the same situation, you'll call to mind that same card and be like, I know what to do now.
Yeah.
So it's almost like these like little future tools of, when you're in this situation at some point in your life, this is how to navigate and to move through it.
And we have recurring themes as well. I think that we come into this life with certain things that we need to learn, and it is that spiral effect. So it's like, I think I've healed that, and then a few years later, or maybe a few months later, something else comes up and it's in a different form, but it's the same kind of thing. And we have to, having that awareness of what we knew from the last time we've dealt with it, it does make it easier, but it's just like peeling back another layer of an onion to really heal that situation. Because I don't think, I mean, I know that some people have healing treatments and they clear things straight away, but I think most of us, the process is like, heal a bit, peel that bit away, integrate that, heal it, it comes up again, heal it even deeper, integrate that, and then that's what kind of holds.
Yeah, and I just, I do think that sometimes we really shoot, and we can be really hard on ourselves when we really expect that there'll be this one day we're just like healed from all of our shit.
Of course, yeah.
And I think especially when we do this work, right, as practitioners and as readers, people assume that we've just like healed all of our shit. We're just like these perfect vessels. And it's like, no, we just have different tools to work on it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like before I had all my spiritual practices or I used tarot for like my own healing, whatever my wound was, I'll be like taken out by my wound. If I'm getting triggered by my wound, I'm going to be like, I'm out of business.
And numb out.
Yeah, like I can't deal with that. I can't look at it. It's going to take me under for like 2 weeks. I can still get triggered by the same wound right now as someone who like lives and breathes spirituality. The difference is I now have a toolkit to work out how to heal and move through that moment. Because this work isn't about bypassing what you're going through.
No.
We can't just
you
like
can't
love
fast
and
track it.
you can't love and let your way out of a bad situation. If that's what we're being surrendered into, you have to surrender into it. So if I'm having, you know, a really bad week, I'm being re-triggered by something, I have my cards, I have my meditation practice, I have my journaling practices. I also just like know how to self-soothe. And I will happily go into my room and cry all day about it so I can shift and be out, and then I'll move through it. And it's almost like in some ways that's the goal of this work. We can't always like say like I'm going to completely heal and fix that wound, because if it's a wound, it happened for a reason. We just no longer become defined by and identified with that wound anymore. We have the tools to push through it. And ultimately in this lifetime, unless you go and like live in an ashram, you're going to be triggered by people constantly.
I'm sure even if you're in an ashram,
you'll be triggered by something.
Yeah.
If you have like a phone, you'll be triggered by something.
Yeah, but even if you didn't have a phone, there would be something. Absolutely. You would have a day, especially if you're on a certain day on your cycle, if your menstrual cycle, if you have period, like, or it's a full moon and everything's intensified, you're gonna be like, no matter where you are.
No, I remember like the other day I was like, why is the TV so loud? Even though I had
you turned it up.
Even though I could literally like turn the TV noise down, I was so annoyed by just like everything that day. I was like, why is it so loud? So it's like you'll always find something to be bothered by, and you just have the resilience to work out what to do with that.
Yeah. You didn't need to pull a card on that though, did you?
Absolutely not. I mean, I knew I was going to get a real bitchy card if I did pull a card, so I thought I'm not even going to ask today.
Yeah. I think that's with the tarot as well. That's the difference between the tarot and oracle cards. Yes. The tarot cards tell you as it is. They are straight talking and they kind of really get to the point. Whereas when you are reading oracle cards, they're just a little bit more softer. They sugarcoat things, don't they? I mean, they can 100%. Still get to the point, but I think the tone and the tone and the depth of the messages can be different.
Yeah, because ultimately I think if you're doing tarot, it's going to be, regardless of like how the card looks or the deck, it will usually be based on the original 78 cards, right?
Yeah.
So with that, you can't really mix the meanings that much. There's 78 cards.
Yeah.
However, if you've got an oracle card, depending on who's created that card, you'll have a different experience.
Yeah.
So if, for example, someone's created an oracle card deck of 40 cards, if all the 40 cards are love and light cards, that's the only message you'll receive.
Yeah.
If they're all
love and light, but it's just a different
totally version. If they're all like, you're great, and versions on that theme,
yeah,
that's what you'll keep pulling.
Yeah.
Tarot doesn't have any mixed messages. It's like there's 78 cards, they all kind of mean around the same thing, because that's what life is.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's like there's difference. Also, the affirmation cards are very much purposefully to like hype you up. But oracle cards, ultimately, if you're using that in a moment when you're in like some real distress, you kind of just want some real talk.
Yeah.
You want something that's going to kind of be like, you need to like get the hell up and start doing something.
Yeah.
In that moment, do you really need something to say like, you're amazing?
Yeah.
It's like
it's just like the hype man sometimes, isn't it? With the oracle cards, I think they can be great as an entry level, and I still work with my oracle, like I do use oracle cards, and depending on who's made them, like I think that changes the tone. And I've got the threads of fate, and I really love them because they're more kind of action. They've got a lot of depth to them. But sometimes you're pulling an oracle card and it's just like it's stroking your hair, like telling you that everything's going to be okay. And sometimes in that moment you just need that reassurance, and you don't need that complexity. Depends where you're at, doesn't it, and what's going on. Sometimes you are just like, you need someone to be like, it's going to be okay, either take the day off or you're okay. But other days it is like, come on babe, get on with it. This has been like you've been resisting this for a long time, and nothing's going to change unless you actually get up and do something.
I think, like, you know, anyone on this spiritual path or who's not on the spiritual path, it requires you to be really honest with where you're at. And that honesty is so important as like how you make changes and also the wisdom that you receive in return. So if you're feeling a certain way, if you really dig deep, you'll know what you need. If you know that you need to do like some big shifts to like feel better, then like tarot is your best bet.
Yeah.
If you just need like some self-soothing, that's when we pull an oracle card. Because in that moment, if you want that quick dirty fix of like a yes or a no answer, that's where you can go. And if you want self-soothing, it's a really nourishing way to read that guidebook and have a really lovely like piece of writing or a poem that really resonates with you.
Yeah.
I think you have to be honest. It's like, in this moment, what do I need? Do I need my really sassy friend who I have no idea what advice she's going to give me?
Yeah, but she's always going to be telling the truth.
Always going to be telling the truth, will always create some like next level life shifts. Or in this moment, I just need nurturing and tending to. Do I need to just know that like spirit's here for me?
Yeah.
Because if you can be real with where you're at on that spectrum, you'll then have better results from like whatever practice you choose to use. But I think it's I think it's like such a great way of explaining it. Like, oracle cards will stroke your hair.
Yeah.
And tarot will be like, I will tell you what you need. I don't care about what you want.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say there's like good or bad cards in tarot. It's very much just like how you perceive the card.
Completely.
Like, there's never going to be a you're going to X, Y, or Z. It's going to just be, this is what we need to look at.
Yeah, these are your choices. These are your options.
Yeah, and they're never going to be
definitive.
100%. Like, even like the cards that some people may perceive as like these really great cards. Like, if there's a card, again, like the Four of Wands, right? Like the joy, the success, or like having fun, like just closing the laptop, just enjoying yourself. I've had clients who hate that card because they're hustling, they're busy.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't want to play.
Yeah.
So even there's like never these like polarized, it's a good card, a bad card, a dark card, a light card, because depending on what you're going through, you'll always have a different reaction to that card.
Yeah, totally.
There's times when you just don't want to hear that you need to go and play. So for you, that will technically be a bad card, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just you can't really put them in those groups.
Do you read reverse cards? How do you ever do it? Are you a reversed kind of girl?
Not a reverse kind of girl.
No, I'm not either. Because they've all got a shadow side.
100%. I think if you like know the shadow sides of the cards, it feels like when I pull a card, depending on what my client's going through, I think also because I think we both work in a very collaborative way, right? So we both have conversations with our clients on like, what are you going through? What are you navigating? Yeah. We don't read blind.
No.
So because it's almost, I mean, I would call it like spiritual therapy. Like, we're having these deep conversations with our clients, so I know what's going on in their life. So if I pull like a King of Pentacles for them, I may even like channel a reversed meaning, because I know right now they're not in the King of Pentacles mindset. They're resisting being in the card. Yeah. So I think like I don't need to see it reversed to know that's what they're going through. But I do know that people who do work very much on those visual cues, because I also think that's how you shuffle your deck. Yeah. Like my cards are usually always in the same order, so they'll never be reversed.
That's just you being all your Capricorn vibes.
100%. They're always neatly in place, so I will never pull a reverse unless they fall on the floor or something.
Yeah, I think if I get them, sometimes if they end up that way, because other people, I mean, with everything that's going on at the moment, when I do readings in person now, like, people don't get to shuffle the cards for themselves, that I'm shuffling for them. But sometimes when I've done readings for people from like, you can go and shuffle the cards. Like, everyone has their own way, so they'll mix it up. So sometimes if it feels like that's coming up for a reason, then I'll read into it. But like, similar to you, it's like, how every time I read a card, it's how does that card feel to me? Is that flowing in the position? And also relative to the question that I'm asking, because sometimes I'm asking a question that is about where their energy isn't flowing. So the card doesn't need to be reversed for that, because again, if we're looking at the card in an upright way, we're only seeing it as like good, and that's going the right way. But if the question that you're asking, if it's like, how am I blocked, and you're pulling like the Ace of Wands, which like initiating and taking action, it's like, no, like the blocked is actually because you're not taking action, like you're not taking the next moves. But yeah, I think everybody reads differently, and I don't think there's any right or wrong way. The only wrong way is when you are predicting things like unethically.
100%.
Unethically, is that a word?
Unethically.
Yeah, that one. Like when you're saying like about predicting health or different certain things, I think that's when you're that's a bad way of reading. But also like when people, I think sometimes when people are reading for other people, you can be so eager to tell people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And I think that's not, I think when you have to really check in, like, have I got an attachment over what I'm telling that person?
Yeah. And I think, I think regardless, I think for every reader, integrity is the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think even if you are, like, for example, if you're a medium and also a tarot reader, or if like us, you get downloads from spirits and you're also a tarot reader, you have to work out and maybe ask your client permission before you give them that wisdom.
Yeah.
So even if like I'm in a Reiki session, for example, if I get this real sense of something's going to happen, it's not like a doomsday situation,
No.
more like even if I just channel someone's ancestor,
Mm-hmm.
I always ask permission before I share it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you've booked in for a tarot reading with me, you've gone onto my website and seen that I don't do fortune telling.
Yeah.
If I then do feel like there's something coming up for you, I will always ask my client, I've just got this message through, do you want to receive it? Because I think that's integrity. And I think it's knowing too that even if you are a medium who can see what's ahead, if you're doing a tarot reading, you have to explain to your client, like, tarot cards are not giving me this information. Like, me being a medium is why I'm getting this wisdom through. But like, the tarot card doesn't mean you're getting married next year. Like, no. I've had a download to tell you that you're going to get married next year, but the cards, there's no card that says to anyone you're getting married next year.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to break the bad news, but that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing. It's just down to the reader's interpretation of what those cards are, and what's coming through in their experiences and what's coming up for them. And I don't know. I mentioned it. I think I mentioned it in one of my other podcast episodes with Kimberly. Like, I've had a few readings. Been seeing this woman for years. It's just tarot reader. Like, she's been incredible. Like, this really supported me as I was really kind of like stepping away from like just situations that weren't good for me, and doing all of the healing work and everything. And I think her readings really helped me feel more confident to go for it and know that I was on the right track. But recently, so I normally have a reading with her once a year, but the last few times I've had readings with her, she's like, you're gonna have a baby in the next month, by next spring, by next, like a few times. And it's fine at first, and you're like, okay, cool. But then, like, I've just found out, like, that I've not even ovulated. So I couldn't. I mean, there probably is a chance that I could, but the last time that I did that reading with her, and she was really full on with like what the child would be like and all of these things, which was really lovely to hear. But then part of me is like, it's just not constructive. Like, what do I do with that information? And that moment was like, that's not. Then I was like, why can't you just read how I'd read? Like, and it's like, yes, just do a reading for yourself. Really kind of like feel into it, because I think for me, I don't know, that's another thing why I think I don't know, and then I say what I'm saying. I think that's why I'm sort of like not so into really going into future prediction, because I think there are people that do future prediction and could be spot on. So I think, like, even like the lady that I was talking about, she's done readings for me and have been super, super spot on. But I just don't want to waste. I'd rather use that time and that person's money that they've invested with me with something that is constructive and information that they can do something with, and that actually empowers them and puts them back into the driver's seat. Because I could technically, well, at that time, I could had IVF or whatever and could have had a child in that time. And other people were having babies around me at that time, so that might have been what she was tuning into as well. But for me now, like, I think like you were saying earlier, it's nice to have that reassurance, but also is that just because that's what you want to hear and not what you need to hear?
Totally. I mean, I think like my very blunt vibe with my clients is, I want you to live your best life, full stop. My only intention is to get you there. However, like, I'm not, in the same way that, our family and friends want us to live our best life, but through very sanitized situations. Your mum doesn't want you to get hurt.
Of course.
Fundamentally. So even if the best thing for you to do right now would be to, for example, jump on a plane and move to Greece permanently, your mum will probably be like, I don't know if you should do that, because your mum doesn't want you coming back on the plane crying. But for me, if I know that you're going to go to Greece and take a risk, even if you come back home crying, you're going to learn something. So I'm not afraid for my clients to go through some shit to get to where they need to get to, because that's honestly the way that we do life and how we can have those really big lessons. So you kind of need somebody in that situation to be like, this is what you need to go through to get to where you want to get to. And you can choose to go through in a very controlled, sanitized environment. And I can promise you the rainbow at the end of it. But ultimately, if that's not going to be how you learn the lessons to get you to the next step, then it's not going to be serving you. And I think there's like some ego attached to that. Like I don't need someone coming back to me in 10 years time saying that was really spot on. I just want you to live your best life. And I want you to be happy and successful and to have a really rich experience on this planet. This is not about me. It's not about, you know, and I wonder if you have too, but like I've definitely had clients who are like, I don't want to give you any information up front. I'm like, I don't read that way.
Yeah.
Like it's not a test.
Yeah.
And
come.
And ultimately, like if you come into the session not giving me anything, you don't get a good session.
Yeah, if you're blocked. So I'm trying to be a better listener. Like I get so excited. That's why I'm like trying to like, hang on, no, wait, just keep going. Like, because I get so excited and I just want to like, oh yeah, look. So I'm trying to get better at being more holding back and letting people finish what they're saying. But there is that thing. I remember doing a course workshop with Tiffany, and we did this practice where we had to everybody got, you know, that game like when you've got like a post-it note and like, who am I? I don't think we had post-it notes on our heads, but everybody had like a type of person, like something. I don't know what everybody else's was, but the person that I'd got paired up with, so it was like different types of someone that is really open, someone that's closed, somebody is going through all these different things. And I remember going to do this reading for this person and nothing. It was as if I'd forgotten all the cards and it was just blank. It was so bizarre. And I was like, nothing. And they're the energy and what they were supposed to be in that doesn't want to know.
Yeah.
So if you are blocked, and I think that's so true, and whenever I've done earlier on in like my sort of professional tarot reading career, I used to do more events.
Yeah, same.
Where I would do, it'd be like a party or a launch thing and people come for readings, and you always get that dick that wants to fucking test you. You know, like, you know, and you're not going to get anything from them because they're just like and it's like, mate, like this is your time. If you want to test me, there is something in this. Like if you're blocking it, I won't get it through. But the more open you are and the least attached you are to the answers, the more you'll get out of it, out 100%. Of the reason. There is something in that. But yeah, like, but yeah, so now I don't get that so much.
No, neither do I.
Or like I'm more like with the events and stuff, maybe like more selective with where I'm doing and then who the crowd is, and I explain it first time, but you can see them like come in.
I can spot it from a mile off, like the arms crossed sitting down, like I know this is
super smug.
Yeah, like so I'm not going to tell you anything and I'll just see what you've got. And I'm like, well, it's just going to be to prove a point to you that this stuff doesn't work, right? And I think I think in so many ways, even though what's been amazing recently is how much spirituality has increased in popularity, I think the downside is we still have like a ton of skeptics. And I think when you don't believe in something, you'll do anything to prove your brain right.
Yeah, completely.
So if you are somebody who doesn't believe that like tarot works or Reiki works, you will do anything to prove to yourself that it doesn't work. Like your whole world for you will be based on this assumption that this stuff doesn't work. Because if you find out it does work, your whole life changes, right?
Yeah.
You then have to confront this fact of like, the way that I've lived my life is actually, there's more to it than what I thought there would be. So I completely get that. Like you want the world to make sense of what you believe it makes sense as.
Yeah.
And I think for us as readers too, like, and I think with people in general, the more boundaries you are in those areas, the better it's going to be.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I would of 100% like play along with that little test. And I think if I do an event now and someone's not giving anything, like, well, the session's done.
Yeah.
Like there might be like a reader who can really serve you in this space, but for me personally, this is not how I work because I want you to have a really rich experience.
Yeah.
And unless you tell me what's happening in your life, I can't tell you that.
Yeah. And it's just owning that as well.
Yeah.
And not playing the game of trying to prove them, trying to like give them an answer, even though they're blocking you.
So I've been watching couples come dine with me.
Yeah.
Because why not? And there's always like a reader or like a Reiki practitioner in every season.
Is there?
Yeah, like so funny. And everyone at the rest of the party is like not about it at all.
Of
Really
course.
dismissive and like actually quite rude about it. And it then becomes like your practice is a party trick. So at every dinner party, it's like the reader's like, oh, just like pull out your cards. I'm like, you work in HR. I'm not going to ask you to like file some paperwork for me at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Like, this is our career and it's our practice and it's our purpose. And it's not something that I can just bring out for fun and to like, it's not a party game.
No.
Like, I would never ask like someone who's like a tattoo artist to do like a tattoo on me at a dinner table.
No. I mean, some
Like,
people would, I reckon.
I mean,
sure.
they probably would.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know,
they didn't
you
know
really,
else.
you really respect like that's their work and it's like very sacred to them. And I think that it's so easy when we don't believe in something that we're so fearful of that we want it to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
So we can then say like, yeah, like I knew it was all rubbish. And I think even if, you know, you did give that person who was dismissive a reading, they would leave the reading being like, yeah, of course it was bullshit.
Yeah. Well, they just don't want to hear, they either don't want to hear it, or it's quite like you're saying, it's like you get out of it what you want out of it, or our brains are just, they only see certain things or they're quick to dismiss. And I did a group meditation, like crystal healing meditation recently for a brand. Was it for that? I can't remember. Yeah. Anyway, but one of the people was like, oh, I never really feel anything. Oh no, yeah. She's like, I never really feel anything. And then afterwards, she's like, oh yeah, I can never get anything. After, it's like, how are you feeling? Oh yeah, really relaxed, really thing, but I still didn't get anything out of it. You just notice me being like, oh my God, I feel so different. But then at the same time saying like, but I don't get anything out of doing this. It's like, it's like a blind spot.
Yeah, and I think I feel like we probably, I mean, on one of our many wonderful chats, I think we spoke about like the clairsenses, right? And as a society, we all believe that we're super blocked intuitively. And whenever I have clients who want to work on intuition, I always ask them like, what do you feel in a meditation session? What do you feel in a Reiki session? And always like, well, I just feel like really hot, but like that's not really anything. I'm like, no, that's everything.
Yeah.
It's just knowing that we all receive communication from spirit, or we channel things in such different ways. When you know that information, you can then realize that even if you're just like shivering when you're meditating, or if you are like hearing sounds, your the way you smell things is more pronounced. That's spirit.
Yeah.
It just may look very different to like how me and you may receive our information. Like, as you said, when you're doing readings, you have more of that clairvoyance, right? Whereas mine's very claircognizance. I'm just receiving lots of knowledge. It doesn't mean that one of us is right or wrong, or one of us is blocked or not blocked. It's like, that's just how, as very unique individuals, we are being called to channel.
Yeah, totally. I'm so curious, like, what are your stalker cards at the moment?
5 of Pentacles. So let me just give you a little story about the 5 of Pentacles. So I guess like everyone has their like real big block, right? So I feel like mine's probably around relationships. And whenever I'm like in my head and my brain's running a story of like someone not liking me, or I'm about to be abandoned or rejected, I always feel the 5 of Pentacles. And it's that feeling of just like not being okay. I feel in the 5 Pentacles, I mean, the way that I read, I'll have to hear your interpretation of this card too. It's always just like that left out in the cold, right? Like the card's very much like you're out in the cold. You don't feel like your needs are going to be met or you're going to be okay. And it's just that feeling of like lack and scarcity ultimately. And I feel like whenever I'm going for like a really big lesson around relationships and that sense, that's like my core wound is going to like, is not being okay. The 5 Pentacles is always there to remind me that I'm in the story of it, because it's not actually what's happening. I don't have any evidence to prove I'm not going to be okay. It's always just like whatever my ego is bringing me into, which is the fear and the safety piece. And the 5 will just like keep recurring because it's just like a really hard lesson for me to move through. And it sometimes for me too, it's like less around like I'm always very open, as you know, to like doing the work. It's like my whole life. So when the 5 keeps coming in, it's less of a I'm resistant to, and more of this is just the space I'm in to almost prove to myself this isn't true. Whatever this like story that you're running right now, it's not actually true. And I'm going to keep pulling the 5s until I can really believe that like I am safe, I am going to be okay, my needs will be met. So as much as like I hate seeing it, if I pulled a card right now, I'm sure it'll be the 5 Pentacles. It's just like such rich wisdom.
Yeah, I think even with the 5 Pentacles, it's that point of I always think of the Five of Pentacles as that contraction,
Always.
that point of tension, but also, like you said, completely that fear and scarcity and that lack. When we're in that energy, it puts this filter on over everything, of kind of like a bit like apathy, and feeling like we don't have control over the situation. We forget, we're disconnected from our power in that moment, which is like, oh yeah, this is all up to everybody else and not me, or everyone else has been invited to that party and I haven't. Like, it's this disconnected energy. But then in that moment, like I said, I feel that point, that contraction, that point of tension is when we forgot. It's like we pull back and we forget, oh yeah, I've got the power to shift this.
Yeah. And I think also, I think especially for us as readers who we're very comfortable with being in contraction because we know what comes next. I think for me too, sometimes even though I don't pull the 6, I know the 6 is coming.
Yeah.
And it's that very like heart opening energy. So it's almost like sometimes when we're in the 5s or we're in those really contractive, restrictive cards that feel really sticky to move through, it's just a symptom that we're growing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be in the 5 unless I'm supposed to be in the 6.
Yeah, exactly. If the 6, that's what I love about the tarot, is that they're the stages. So if you know, oh, I'm in the 5s at the moment, next step
Totally
is the 6, because we're here for, it's about master. I mean, if you're not doing the work and whatever, then you will stay in the 5 for like maybe a year, maybe a few years or whatever. But it's knowing, like, oh, if I keep doing the work and just tuning in, where am I, and having that self-awareness of where am I contracting, where am I kind of like pulling back, actually, where it's time to push forward, or am I pulling back just to kind of psych myself up for that push to really ask for what I want and really step up to that, and but have that deep awareness that I have that self-worth to ask for more.
Yeah, and I think like that's such, a good thing for people who are thinking of booking for readings or wanting readings. Even if you do pull those cards that feel very sticky, it's not just for fun. Like, it's because you're growing through something.
Yeah.
Like, I can welcome in the devil card now in such a different way. I'm just like, oh, the devil only comes up for me when I'm about to grow into something.
Yeah.
When I'm on that little growth edge of like stepping into or up leveling, that's when you always pull the contractions or the like sticky cards. So it's knowing that even if you do pull a card that you're like, oh, I don't love this for me, it's to help you to grow to something.
Totally.
Like, we don't grow unless we're feeling a bit uncomfortable. It's like when there's like someone like poking you in the side when you're trying to like make you laugh. It's like that feeling, just like you wouldn't make a change or like get off of the sofa unless you're feeling a bit like resistant or in some tension. If you're just like smooth sailing through life, you're looking for a tarot reading. You probably would not want to make any changes in your life because you're like, well, it's okay. I guess I'll stay being okay.
Yeah.
But if you're in that discomfort or that pain or that tension, is to help you to grow through, to up level and to upgrade your life in some area. Like, Spirit doesn't hate us. He wants us to like step up and into something.
Yeah.
So it's almost like welcoming in, not bypassing it and owning that, yes, it doesn't feel great in this card, but it's knowing too that you're only in it to get to the next step.
Yeah. So interesting you're saying that, because even it's just making me think of that quote that I used for the first episode, that where you were like, your ego will throw all of that, and like where you're saying you call your ego it's your pet name, like the devil card is your ego, and how in the first episode you were saying, like, just as you're about to have a breakthrough, your ego will kick up a fuss and say all that junk, and that's the sign that something's going to happen. So it's interesting how that's playing through with the cards.
Yeah, I think tarot is so good at that. Like, there's certain, cards that feel sticky, they just always come up like clockwork when you're about to hit that next level, because the more we get to that next level, the more resistance you're going to have, because your ego doesn't want you to grow to the next level.
Yeah, totally. That's what it's all about, isn't it? What if for somebody that was like new to tarot and wanted to learn more, what would be your top tip?
So I feel like if you want to learn tarot as like a personal practice, just like get really familiar with the deck, and I think just start pulling cards every single day, especially like through the good times and the bad times. So if you are having like a really rough day, pull a card and see what comes up. If you're having like the best day of your life, also pull a card. I think it's like the cards need to just like be a part of your life and live with you, rather than just these like moments of, okay, I'm going to do a reading, a really big one today, because you'll learn like if you're in a certain energy and you pull a card that really resonates with that energy you're feeling, that's the meaning of the card.
Yeah.
And you'll always just like refer back to it and say, okay, when I had this really great expansive period, I kept pulling, King of Pentacles.
Mm-hmm.
So I now know what that card means. If you're in, again, like how I am, the Five of Pentacles, you can really link like how you're feeling to whatever the card you're pulling up is. So I think like that's a great way to kind of leave the guidebook and just really resonate with like, okay, when I'm in this energy, this is what I pull, therefore it must mean this.
Yeah, and journaling on those messages.
Yeah.
But I think another thing is like what questions you're asking those cards, because I think
100%.
if you're not specific enough with the question that as you're pulling it, then I think that sometimes when people are like, oh, I don't really know what that means, but it's like if you haven't asked a question, the questions make it easier to frame what you're getting and that answer. So if you're kind of really vague or you're just pulling a card, sometimes it can make sense, but if it's not answering something, I think then it could be harder to interpret what it's saying to you. And having them as expansive questions, so rather than like I was saying, like when I was like 14, like does so and so fancy me, like yes or no. It's like really kind of reframe it to what will support me to open, like am I ready for a relation, like how ready am I for a relationship, where am I at that stage, like what will support me to feel more confident to open up to a relationship, and maybe what's the energy around this dynamic between me and that person.
100%. I feel
think
like
it's so different.
Yeah, those open questions make all the difference in a reading. And I guess so then the advice for if you're coming into a reading for like the first time is just be prepared to talk, right? Like be prepared to talk to us.
Yeah.
And to like share what you're going through, because also we're both space holders. We're here to hold space. So even if you spend like 20 out of our, our session talking, that's what needs to happen in that moment. And whatever you say to us is going to be heard, respected, and supported. And we can then take those into the cards, and then we can ask deeper questions. So it's almost like if you're kind of on that place of like wanting to book in, kind of having some fear, like the advice is just to trust in the process. When you're guided to get a reading, trust that. Even if you have that anxiety or nervousness, you're going to be safe in that space. We'll always keep you safe, the both of us. And it's really just trusting in that moment of like, okay, I'm feeling like I want to get some wisdom. Can I just really allow myself to go there and to be open to receiving?
And I think, I know a feedback that I get a lot from people is that a lot of the time people, especially if they've never had a reading before, or maybe they've had a bad reading before, so they're nervous of like what they're going to be told. There's that kind of apprehensiveness. But I always find like the feedback that I get is that I'm just telling them things that they have been thinking deep down that have been like going on or coming up, but maybe they haven't said out loud to someone or admitted to themselves, or weren't sure if they were going crazy because this is coming up, but the person that they're in a relationship is telling them something completely different, or in different situations. But often it's like, I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. I will, because it might be like what's holding you back, but know deep down 100%. On a level there's something there.
It's just like under the surface stuff, right? I always say that tarot is like a private investigator. It will always find out the stuff that you either been like too afraid to step into. And even like, with the really big cards like the Emperor, right? When you're really harnessing that really powerful taking up space energy, there's probably a part of you that on some level wanted to step into that but was too terrified to step into. Or you had the self-worth that was like, I can never have a life that looks like that. And until someone says to you and gives you permission and says you need to like be seen and take up space, it will then make sense to you and be like, I feel like I knew this, but I was just too scared to step into it.
Completely.
So it's like, totally, we're not giving you any, revolutionary new insights. You've always felt this before, but it's now the permission piece of, now's the time to redo something with that. If you choose to.
Completely. Oh, this has been so good. If anybody that is like, right, I want to have a reading with Giselle, and that's saying like, you can have a reading with me or with Giselle, like there's no competition. Like we wouldn't be having we wouldn't have this conversation otherwise.
We share like lots of clients, and I think that's like what's so special about our friendship. But also this work is, both of our intention is whatever's in your highest and greatest good. So whether you get that from Tamara or myself or any practitioner, we don't really care. As long as like you get what you need in that moment, we're going to be happy. This is the reason why we do the work that we do. And I think that's the most important piece. And I think sometimes too, like there's moments of your life where you're called more to one person than the other person.
Yeah.
And then maybe like if you're having like a little download right now of like, oh, Tamara's like way on my wavelength. And it's like, because in that moment, they need to hear something that you have to tell them.
Yeah.
And I think
Or,
it's just trusting.
yeah.
It's just
Or
trusting that
they
in
try and
others.
book in with one of us, and then they're like, oh, I can't get in with that one because she's blue. But I know that I trust the other one, and then but they've got an availability. There is, I think it's just that you end up with who you're meant to, aren't you?
100%. But
yeah, where can people find you?
I guess like I spend a lot of time on the old Instagram, but yeah, my website's just projectarjuna.com or Project Arjuna on Instagram, and I do like all of my tarot readings over WhatsApp or phone call.
Amazing.